This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode number 18.
I came in one day and a gentleman was visiting from Germany, and he brought in a CNC machine and some brochures. And while he was talking to everybody, I was looking at the brochure, and I saw that there was a CNC machine that could mill, cut, carve, engrave, hot wire, foam cut vinyl graphics, and 3D print. So I don't even know that I heard much of what he was saying because I was just blown away by the fact that this one machine can do all of this stuff.
This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by TheMakersGuide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Griggs, and I'm very glad to welcome our guest today, Eric Royer. Eric is here to talk to us about how he's using a CNC router to build a business. And what's unique about the way Eric did it was he used Kickstarter, and he was very successful in doing so. So sit back and relax as we continue this series on how to build a business with a CNC router table. I am so glad to have today Eric Royer with me. Eric has got a pretty unique story that I think you'll enjoy. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm doing great, Bill. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and I really enjoy the podcast.
Well, thank you. Now, you're a podcaster as well.
Yeah, I am. We've been podcasting for almost 2 years now. With our main one is the Multi-Rotor Podcast, which is about drones, and we've been really successful with that. We have a little over 50,000 subscribers.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it takes a little more than just a little bit of effort to grow an audience of that size. So that's something to really feel proud about. Pat yourself on the back. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, you and I actually have not quite crossed paths. I know you by reputation.
Oh, boy.
Because we both had previous experience. In my capacity as a contributor, and yours as an editor for a magazine, Fly RC.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, you've been into radio control airplanes and stuff for a long, long time, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, since I was 12 years old.
Yeah. I actually started out as one of the first individuals around the website rcuniverse.com, and I did that for about 8 years until we sold the website. And then I went from there to print. So I went backwards, I guess, from online to print. And I took a job as an executive editor for Maplegate Media, running Fly RC, RC Helipilot. And then I started the Multi-Rotor Pilot, which now they changed the name and call it Drones Magazine last year. So, yeah, a lot of radio control in our past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the reason that I got started in CNC originally. I wanted to produce kits, and I was already doing laser cut kits, but I wanted to do some with a CNC router, but didn't have any real information on it, and so that started me on my journey. How did you get into CNC?
Well, pretty much for the same reason. We were, because of the different magazines that they produced, there was always a need to make parts for, whether it be for RC cars or especially model airplanes. When you fly and you break something, it's nice to be able to cut out a rib, exactly. Or we made a lot of parts for helicopter frames. And then when I got involved in drones about 2.5 years ago, we started a side business called Aerial Drone Works, where we build and fly That eventually turned into a business that, ended up, we fly for TV commercials and things like that. And it became a real high-end company, but there was always a need to customize our machines to hold a specific camera or to, make a landing gear work a certain way. And we were doing it all by hand. And then that's when I decided to get into CNC. And I'd used CNC machines in the past, CNC routers. I have a lot of friends that have them, so I'm not unfamiliar with them. But when I get into something, I get into it really big. And so much so that I ended up leaving the magazine, and now I'm working CNC full time.
Mm-hmm. So when you decided that you were going to start making drones, what kind of materials were you making them out of when you were using your router?
It's funny. The very first one I built was made out of 1/4-inch plywood, believe it or not. I built it, I designed it, and I milled it out, and I did an article on it for the magazine. I called it the Wood Drone. And I wanted to prove that you could build a pretty durable and very, very inexpensive FPV quadcopter yourself, easily without having to worry about the expensive carbon fiber and the dust and everything. Mm-hmm. And to this day, that machine has over 100 flights on it, and I'm amazed at how durable plywood is mm-hmm. for a quadcopter. But it worked really well. And there was a lot of people who downloaded the plans and built different versions of it. But that was the first thing. Professionally, for Aerial Drone Works, we use carbon fiber pretty much for everything, and aluminum.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you mentioned just now was FPV. Some of our listeners may not be familiar with drones. So tell them what FPV stands for.
FPV is first person view. And basically what that means is you have a camera on the quadcopter facing forward, and you wear a pair of video goggles, and the video signal is transmitted in real time back to the goggles. So you're essentially flying as if you were in the cockpit of the quadcopter. It's a really, really up and coming part of a segment of the drones right now. So much so that they've got international competitions that I think here's my prediction. My prediction is 2 more years you're going to see FPV drone racing on ESPN. Mm-hmm. Because they've shown interest in it because of the fact that they can transmit live from the machine, and everybody loves to see, if you're not a pilot in full scale, most people never realize what it's like, to be in the air flying around. So it's really taken off a lot, and that's a huge part of the hobby. That's still the hobby for me. We don't do anything mm-hmm. business related with FPV drones.
Yeah, I've seen one of my friends, David Barron, doing an FPV rig when he's at the NEAT Fair, which is a giant radio-controlled fun fly. But it's always looked really interesting. I've not tried it, but it's one of those things on my bucket list.
Yeah. We'll have to get you. We'll have to send you one. I've got probably 30 frames here, so I'll send you one, and it'd be interesting to see what you think. It's interesting how the drone market is a natural migration into the CNC machines too, because if you buy carbon fiber plate or G10 fiberglass or even plastic for that matter, mm-hmm. And you crash, you instead of having to wait 5 days to get new parts and pay shipping and all that, you could just have the pattern on your machine, throw it in your CNC, and in a matter of minutes, you've got a brand new part to get back in the air. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty exciting. Same thing holds true, I guess, with wood constructed airplanes, except nowadays I don't think you're seeing as many wood constructed airplanes. I think everything is going more foam, but it is still nice to be able to replace a part when it breaks and yourself, and just make it.
Oh, yeah. And it's the same with the foam as well. If you have a source of EPP, expanded polypropylene foam, or whatever, you can actually mill a replacement for a part on your router. So it's not that far-fetched.
Yeah, true.
So Yeah, it's amazing stuff. So tell us about the machines that you have had.
Well, I've actually worked on quite a few different machines, including Probotics and Xcarve, and even I have a good friend who has a CNC router that he's made out of MDF. As a DIY. I forgot the name of it. You had just talked about it in one of your last podcasts. It was like a kit that was online.
Mm-hmm. The Sidewinder, maybe from Dave Gatton?
Yeah. What was the guy's name who made it?
Or Joe's CNC.
That's it. Joe's CNC.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yep.
So having had experience with a lot of them, there was always things that I liked and didn't like about each system. But they all basically did the same thing. It's just it's funny. I'm the type of person that I'll go and I'll buy something, and the first project that I have to do on that machine is something that's outside of the machine's capability. I don't know what it is, like why I can never be happy with just what the machine's capable of, but I'll always have these ideas, and I'll be like, oh, I wish I could just do this,
Yeah.
And so I'd searched long and hard to try to find something that was more universal. But I'm also very big into 3D printing too. I have been for years. We made a lot of prototype stuff for the drones and just anything with 3D printers. So I've had quite a few 3D printers. I still do. I think I have 4 left, including an Ultimaker and a MakerBot, and so I'm pretty familiar with that side of the technology. And it's exciting to get into the CNC side. It's nice to take material away every once in a while.
Well, it's fun. I had a MakerBot Thing-O-Matic, and it was a great machine. A little bit before its time. I think their current line of 3D printers is a lot more rugged and stable, and more user friendly. But there are so many things that you can do when you add 3D printing to your, tools set. And that's a pretty cool thing. And when you combine 3D printing and routing, even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing with the 3D printing that I like is that, unless you have a 4th axis on your router and know how to program, 4-axis milling, there's some shapes and stuff that just works itself better to a 3D print. Of course, it takes more time and a little bit more knowledge as far as the design process. But with some of the new materials that are out there, like NinjaFlex and carbon-infused PLA and nylon-infused PLA, you can make some 3D printed parts that rival things that you would have injection molded. And yeah, it's really. I mean, I've 3D print several custom designed quadcopter frames, again for FPV, that are solely 3D printed, and the only downside is that they take forever to print. It's still a relatively slow technology, where milling is certainly a lot quicker.
Yeah. Now, we've been doing a series. I'm just digressing a little bit here for a second, but I'm going to come back to this 3D printing and milling. We've been doing a series of podcasts lately, talking about how people are making money using a CNC router table to build their business. And you took it actually in a slightly different direction. You're still doing that, but I first became aware of you, other than from the magazine, through a campaign I saw on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And, maybe I think our listeners would love to hear about what it was that you did and, how things went there and what your experiences are, if you'd care to share.
Sure, absolutely. When I was at the magazine, I came in one day and a gentleman was visiting from Germany, and I wasn't even aware of it. And I walked in, they said, we have a guest today, and sat in the conference room, and he brought in a CNC machine and some brochures. And while he was talking to everybody, I was looking at the brochure, and I saw that there was a CNC machine that could mill, cut, carve, engrave, hot wire, foam cut vinyl graphics, and 3D print. So I don't even know that I heard much of what he was saying because I was just blown away by the fact that this one machine can do all of this stuff. And it came time, his presentation was done, and it came time to go to lunch. And he and I had went to lunch for about 3 hours, and we joke about it now because of this burger we had, and we said it all started with a burger. And, I was looking for a change in my life and what I was doing. And he was telling me that he had set up an office in Chicago and had this plan of bringing this company to the United States. And I went home and I did some research on it. And the company is called Stepcraft, and it was something that was brand new to the United States. They had only sold through Europe and because they're based in Germany. And I called him the next day and I said, you know what, I want to do this. I want to sell Stepcraft here in the States. And so he came back about a week later and spent a week with me, and we went over kind of a business model. And at the time, they were at the tail end of their first version machines. We now call them Stepcraft 1. And they were ready to release a new version 2 machine by May of this past year, 2015. Mm-hmm. So, because we were talking, when I first met him was October of 14. And so I said, well, you know what, I want to do this, but I'm not moving to Chicago. And since he didn't hire anybody, we actually rented an RV and a trailer and drove to Chicago, packed up all the furniture and everything that he bought that nobody ever used. It was all brand new, and brought it back to Connecticut and set up the lower level of my house as Stepcraft USA. And we started selling machines. We went to the RAM show, which is a model airplane show in Westchester, New Jersey. Then we went to the Toledo show, and the reception from the modelers for this machine just kind of blew me away. So we were looking for a way to really make a splash and come up with the extra capital we need to really do a good job bringing a new version of the machine to market and launching the brand at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I decided to start a Kickstarter campaign, and our initial goal was about $50,000. I think that's what we were looking to do for sales. And we put it out there. I built a really nice campaign. I had a friend help with a video for it, and it worked well. And I remember I went to bed the day it launched, and I woke up in the morning, and there was 2 people who backed it already. We were already up to like $5,000, and I was just blown away because I follow Kickstarter, but I've never actually done anything with a product. I did do a small campaign for my fiance last year. She had launched a book, and that campaign actually was successfully funded as well, but nowhere near in the same dollar range as we're talking here. Mm-hmm. So I knew immediately that there was going to be some strong interest for our machine. And we went to 30 days, and by mid-month, by 15 days into it, my full-time job at that point was just answering questions and comments and things from people through Kickstarter. And the last 48 hours, I didn't sleep. I was up 100% on my computer answering every message because that was the last push. And I think by the 28th day, we were up over $300,000 in sales, and we finished 48 hours later at $510,000. So it was pretty exciting to have that successful of a campaign and that much of a response, and it was certainly an awesome way to launch a new business here in the U.S. You know,
yeah. Now let's back up just a hair.
Sure.
I realize not everyone knows what Kickstarter is. Kickstarter's crowdfunding. So explain to the listeners a little bit more about what Kickstarter is, and how where would you use it?
Sure. Well, Kickstarter, when it originally launched, it was more based for people that were like into music and people that write books and things like that, and it was a way for you to present your idea And if people were interested, they would pledge some money towards it. And in return, usually they'll get a copy of the CD or a copy of the book or something like that. And you'd have different pledge levels or different reward levels for what the amount that they pledge. And after a couple of years, when Kickstarter launched, it started becoming an amazing platform for people who develop product, because it's a good way for you to, if you have a product idea, maybe you make a prototype, you do a video, you put all the specs, you put it out on Kickstarter, and the market is going to tell you if it's going to be a worthwhile product to pursue, rather than go and spend $100,000 in China making product and bringing it in and then have nobody to buy it. Mm-hmm. So in our case, this was already a product that existed in Europe. We were using Kickstarter a little bit differently because we weren't a new business venture that we were launching a product for the very first time. We were launching the U.S. operations for Stepcraft, because we're not a distributor. We run this as Stepcraft. It's just the U.S. company. Mm-hmm. And I coupled that with launching the new product line and all the new features that it had. So what we ended up doing was basically selling pre-orders. So the people who pledged on Kickstarter, we had different packages made with all the accessories and things. And you would basically be pre-ordering that package, and you would receive your Stepcraft machine before anybody else. We didn't sell any machines to anybody on the website or anything until the very last Kickstarter order was filled. So it's a pretty powerful platform, whether you're an artist or whether you're looking to see if there's a market for a new product idea that you have, or if you're looking to expand your business. So it's really incredible.
The thing that impresses me the most about Kickstarter is that it's an all or nothing proposition. You set your own goal as to how much funds you want to raise. And if you don't reach that goal in the time limit that you've set, then you don't receive funding. Nobody gets charged any money. Nobody's out of pocket anything. And you're not out of pocket the heavy expenses of tooling up to make this product.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why we set our goal. Honestly, I thought we were being aggressive at 50,000. I had no idea. I said, it'd be great if we sold 50,000. And we hit that goal in less than 48 hours. And then it becomes then you're in your mind, you set your next goal. Okay, we did 50. Can we do 100? Mm-hmm. And then, 100 quickly turned into 200. And then I remember the last 4 or 5 hours, we were at around 470,000. I said, can you imagine if we can do 500,000? And, I just kept pounding away, answering emails and posting on Facebook and things. And I was blown away at 510,000. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. There's a fact that I read in a book called the Kickstarter Handbook, that if your campaign reaches the 50% mark, I'm going to quote a statistic, but it may not be accurate, you're 80 to 90% guaranteed to meet your goal, because you've reached the tipping point, that 50% mark. And you guys did that in, a matter of hours, really.
Yeah. It was, that's true. And I've read that statistic as well. And it does hold true. It's for anybody that's looking, and the Kickstarter is a great platform, I think, for all of your listeners as well, because let's face it, a lot of people that have CNC routers or 3D printers are very creative people, and they have ideas for how to make a product or something like that. And the Kickstarter is a great platform to put a product out there. I don't care if you're just making a CNC, clock that's for hunters or something like that. I encourage everybody to check out the platform, because it doesn't cost you anything unless your campaign is successful. And then they take 5% of your total revenue, which really is not a lot when you think about the marketing aspect of it. And your campaign will live on Kickstarter indefinitely. I mean, we get calls today from people who found our machines just by searching Kickstarter and saw that it was a successful campaign, and they call and ask, hey, are you guys actually selling your machines now? So Yeah, it's great. I mean, I don't care if all you want to do is make $500 or if you want to make 500,000. It's an amazing platform.
Yeah, I've been toying with the idea, but my real focus right now is the podcast and the CNC Router Tips community. So I haven't taken that leap, but someday in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely a cool business model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd be willing to. I mean, if any of your listeners was considering it and they needed some advice or wanted to, talk about some ideas or something like that, I mean, reach me through your forum. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it.
Mm-hmm. So now let's get back to, since we've gone down the road with Kickstarter, let's get back to talking a little bit more about the actual machine. The Stepcraft, it got you excited because it was able to do so many things. So why don't you spend some time and talk about your machine?
Sure. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, the Stepcraft is, I mean, I guess for lack of a better word, it's considered a CNC router. Some people refer to it as a mill. One of the advantages of the machine is that the way that they made the tool holder is very universal. So the initial machines that they designed to use a Dremel, like a Dremel 4000 or a Proxxon handheld rotary tool as the spindle to make things. And they quickly evolved into designing their own HF 500 spindle, which is a computer-controlled, air-cooled 500-watt spindle. And we've since redesigned it now, so there's a new attachment so that you can also use like a DeWalt DW611 or a Makita trim router if you wanted. Mm-hmm. So just the ability to change spindles I thought was really cool. And then when I started looking at all of the different options that there were, there's a 3D print head attachment and literally to change attachments, you don't even need any tools. You just loosen up the tool holder and pull the one attachment out, pop the next attachment in, and you're ready to go. So you could quickly go from milling and cutting and carving to 3D printing and then back again if you want. And the 3D printing system, being that I had so much experience in that was the one thing that interested me the most. And what I like about it is the design is it puts the stepper motor right above the filament tube. So it's a straight shot and you're actually pulling filament from the spool instead of a Bowden type where you're pushing the filament from the back of the machine into the head. And the reason I like that is because with all the newer filaments that are out there, like Ninja Flex and things like that, you have to have positive control right at the heat source of the filament in order to accurately be able to retract it. And the design that they had just makes it perfect for all of those fancy PLA filaments that are out there. The other thing is because it's a CNC router or a mill, however you want to refer to it, it's the drive mechanisms are screw drive as opposed to a typical 3D printer, which basically is a 1-to-1. It has a belt right on the stepper motor. So as the stepper moves, the head moves an equivalent amount. The accuracy on the Stepcraft machine is plus or minus 1,000th of an inch. And that same accuracy holds true in the 3D printer because you're attaching it to the same tool holder. So you have an extreme amount of accuracy for 3D printing. The downside is because it's a screw drive instead of a 1-to-1, it's going to be a little slower than a typical 3D printer. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you don't have to have two separate machines kind of makes up for it in a lot of cases. But then we have other attachments too. There's a hot wire cutter, which looks a lot like a scroll saw attachment, and it has a heated wire, and you can use it to cut any kind of foam, styrofoam, foam board, pretty much any type of foam that you can cut with a hot knife. You can use the hot wire, so it now becomes a CNC for, like we were saying before, wing cores and things like that. You can cut with this machine.
Just a quick question though: is that a 3-axis hot wire or 4?
Well, the hot wire would be. Well, I guess it's really only two axis when you think about it, right? It's X and Y, because there's really no need for Z, because the wire itself is about 4.5 inches tall. So you load the foam in the center of the machine, and you basically just adjust your Z0 so that the wire's in the center of the foam, and that's kind of how it works. So you don't have the ability to, like with a fourth axis, where you're going to rotate it. So it is a little limited as far as like if you were trying to design a flat panel wing. It's think of it more like a scroll saw.
Okay.
You know, the wire is vertical to the table. And then there's other attachments too. We have an engraving point. We have a plotting pen. There's the one thing I thought was really cool that got my attention is there's a drag knife attachment that you could use for cutting cardstock and paper, films like Monocoat and things like that for model airplanes, and vinyl. And it's got an adjustable blade height sensor, so you could use the Stepcraft machine as a vinyl cutter, and the accuracy is amazing. It works extremely well. And if the other thing that we found after bringing this machine to a couple of local shows was that typically a CNC router will sit in the workshop, right? And it's typically the man's domain. And so the machine, I know your guests that were on last week is a husband and wife team, which I thought was awesome. But typically, it's kind of a guy's territory with these machines. We have about 30% of our customers right now, and the inquiries we have are women. The Stepcraft machine has made a pretty big dent in the scrapbooking industry because of the ability to cut foam and paper and cardstock and things like that.
Sure.
So now you got it makes it really easy. If you because now it's a family purchase, right? And the husband can use it, the wife can use it, the kids can use it. It's pretty unique when it comes to that.
Yeah, I was surprised at the number of ladies that are involved in CNC. When I started the Facebook group, I really wasn't expecting, just your typical old woodworker guy.
Yep.
And there are a lot of ladies in the group. They're crafters, they're woodworkers, they're scrapbookers, and this appeals to them because they already were making custom-made products and things. And so it was a nice addition, for the lady who had maybe a Cricut, paper cutter or whatever, to move up to, being able to cut out wood and other things. That was a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this hits right in the target.
Now we've done a few things too that are, like as if what we're doing now isn't unique in its own right, but one product we just released last week is we have a new automatic tool changer that's been released, and it's the first. So it'd be the first machine in this space that I'm aware of that has an ATC, and it basically has a tool rack on the back of the machine, and you load up each end mill or tool that you need, and when you're creating your file in like Vectric Cut 2D or something, you would basically you assign the tool number to each tool, and the machine. So if you're doing a carving job where you've got a roughing pass, and actually even one step further, we have a lot of people that use rough cut lumber that they get from a lumber yard. So the very first thing that they do is they'll use a surfacing bit to clean up the top. And then they'll switch to maybe a 1/4 inch end mill to do rough pass, and then they'll switch to a small ball nose for the carving. That's 3 tool changes right there. And to be able to have the machine do it all automatically, simply by loading it up, on a machine that you can buy for less than, fully outfitted, $2,000 to $3,000. That's unheard of. It's pretty cool. That's one of my favorite options that they've had.
So how many tools does the tool changer hold?
10. It'll have there's a 10 tool rack on it.
Wow, that's good. Now, one thing we haven't mentioned at this point was how large a machine the Stepcraft is, because I think you have more than one option. That's
correct. Yeah, that's one thing that we have that it can be looked at both ways. It's a little confusing for some people, but the reasoning behind it makes a lot of sense because not everybody has the same application requirement. So there's actually 5 different Stepcraft models. We have a 210, a 300, a 420, a 600, and an 840. And if all you were going to do was work on very small parts, I don't know, maybe you're just prototyping something that's really tiny, then you don't have a reason to have a large router table, especially if you don't have the room for it. The 210 and the 300 models, I mean, we have people that do custom dental work that use them for making molds. There's some people that are doing primarily 3D printing. You don't need as large of a tool bed, so those machines work really well for that.
So back up a second, Eric. Give us a size in either millimeters or inches for one of the small models, and then for the largest.
Okay. Well, the 210 would be the number of the machine denotes the work surface area in millimeters from along the y-axis from front to back. So the 210 is work area is actually 210 millimeters by 210 millimeters. Whereas the largest machine, the 840, is 840 millimeters front to back by 600 millimeters wide. So essentially right around 33 by 24 inches.
Okay. So anywhere from about 8.5 inches up to 34.
Yep, that's correct.
The model that you choose.
Yep.
Okay.
And I know a lot of your listeners have larger, I know you do too. You have a larger router table, and I know a lot of guys have ones where you can even put 4x8 sheet of material in. That's not the segment of the market that we go after. But we have a lot of woodworkers and cabinet makers that buy our machines because the 840 is large enough to do raised panel doors and things like that. So it's a very functional machine at that size.
Yeah, I've got to confess to a slight bias. When I first built my machine, I started with a small machine, and when I was choosing the products or the projects that I wanted to work on, I actually knew that I wanted larger work area than what I had chosen. And so when I built my current machine, I built it to the size that that I needed for the majority of the projects that I thought I would be doing. But it ends up that I'm only using a very small segment of the machine most of the time, probably an area less than 2 feet of the machine gets the majority of the work. And so through the Facebook group and, listening to how people are doing things and, other, just getting feedback from other people, I figured out a unique use for this size machine that totally changed my outlook on it, and makes me think that I have a spot for that size machine that would actually be productive for me, and would be really cool, not having to warm up the workshop to go outside, things like that. So there are a variety of uses for these machines in different sizes. So that's pretty cool. I didn't mean to ramble on that, but
no. That's a good point. You actually had on a podcast you did the other day. You were the discussion came up about a beginner machine versus an intermediate versus your dream machine. I forget which episode that was, but I thought that was a really good dialogue because I answer that question a lot here. And, I think our pricing is extremely affordable for the various size machines. I mean, they start at $1,000 and they go up to about $2,000 for the largest machine. And that's for the base machine. And then, of course, you can add whatever accessories you want. But I know there's a lot of people that'll go to eBay and they'll buy a CNC router from eBay, and you can get one for, $400 to $700. I've seen, decent sized machines. And to me, that's what I consider a beginner machine because it gets you in cheap. But especially if you're going to do a business, as your business progresses, support is going to be huge. And a lot of those companies just don't have that. so we don't answer a lot of questions about a beginner versus a pro machine, because honestly, I consider the accuracy and everything, and the durability and the ruggedness of the Stepcraft machines, I can consider it a pro machine all day long. But what I have to answer all the time is making sure somebody buys the right size machine. Because the last thing I want to do is see somebody buy a 420 and then, like me, they buy a machine and then the very first job is something that the machine's not capable of doing. So I really spend a lot of time with every single customer going over a ton of scenarios to make sure that they're going to be happy with the size that they choose. And I don't want to see them undersized at some point, especially because there's only a couple $100 difference between the machines as you go up. So, and while Vectric is really awesome, I know you're very fond of that software too, and reseller, I believe too. Yeah. The fact that you can tile jobs with Vectric helps. If you did have that one occasional job that's a little bit larger, there are ways of making it work, but.
Yeah, but it's much easier if you can do it in one shot. And, tiling is great, but you are correct. Choosing the right size machine for the work that you're going to be doing is very, very, it's like job one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we have, we're fortunate. The new machine has a little over 6-inch Z height, which is good. From what I understand, a lot of the other machines in this range, I know Probotics and the X-Carve and all those are a little less than that. So we have some features that I feel we definitely stand out outside of the universal nature of the tooling. Then one of the other things that we just launched, I was trying to make a big deal about it on Facebook, dropping like hints here and there, but the next attachment that we'll be releasing for the Stepcraft machine will be.
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
The next attachment that we'll be releasing for the Stepcraft machine will be a laser head for it. And that's something that we've had. That was a huge request when we were doing Kickstarters. Will you guys ever have a laser? And they finally had the prototype at a large show about 3 weeks ago in Germany. So I did put a video up on our Facebook page of it. And it works great. It'll be a relatively inexpensive attachment that will allow you to do laser engraving and even cutting of thinner materials.
Fantastic. Yeah, there are a lot of times when engraving something with a laser really cleans up a project. I have a separate laser cutter, but there are times when I wish that it was on the machine at the same time, on my CNC router at the same time, so I could just run the next tool path and be done.
Yeah, exactly.
And know that everything will register and be lined up correctly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I thought too, because much like changing an end mill on a spindle, if you're working on a project that you have to do, a carving or cutting work, and you have the part fixtured, and then the last thing you need to do is some laser engraving, you can simply just swap out the head, and your XY0 is still the same. So you can run that next tool path, and you can treat the laser as if it's just another end mill that you're running. Yeah. So we're really excited about that. It's not going to be a super high power laser. I mean, we don't have the machine is a very open frame machine, just like any other CNC router. So the laser has to be all self-contained, which leaves us working with a diode-based laser as opposed to a CO2 and bouncing beams across mirrors and things like that. But we're also not selling it as a standalone as a laser. It's a universal machine. It does a lot of different things. So, like you have your own laser there, I'm sure there's a lot of jobs that specific machine is good for by itself. But this just allows you to, switch back and forth from one thing to another without having to have an investment of $10,000-$12,000 in different machines in your shop.
Yeah. Now, safety is a big issue with a laser and with any CNC machine. How do you deal with that? Because are you using goggles?
They will include goggles, but you will never have a direct view of the laser beam. There's actually a shroud around it so when the laser comes down, and I'll send you the link, Bill, so you can maybe put it in the show notes to the video. But when the laser comes down, it has a shroud that there's just a very tiny gap between the bottom of the laser and the surface of the material that you're working on. So you couldn't get your fingers in there. You could still see it glow, which is why we'll include goggles, but you won't be able to see the beam directly.
Okay. Yeah, that's just the main concern. I do know that there are some do-it-yourself listeners out there, and the last thing I would like for anyone to do is to say, "Hey, let's go and make our own laser." Go ahead and mount it and start firing it without knowing that they really needed protection from the beam. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to stress to people, a laser is not a toy.
That's our biggest concern, and I think that's the factory's biggest concern as well, because especially in the United States, I mean, this is a very when people get hurt, it's not a good thing here. So a safety in every aspect is important. And on our machines, I mean, when you look at the machine, everything that could potentially pinch points and moving parts, everything is covered. There's no, I mean, obviously when the spindle's running with an end mill on it, there comes a point where I guess you have to use some common sense, like don't stick your finger into it. But that's the same for anybody's machine. But we've taken every possible avenue of ensuring safety on all of our attachments. Even the drag knife, which is interesting, it's a spring-loaded base on it, and the blade is adjustable so it sticks out. So when it's making contact with vinyl or something, it's completely shielded, so you can't. It's not like you can put your finger in there. There's no pinch points or anything. Mm-hmm. They've taken a lot of engineering time to make these machines not only durable and very usable, but also safe.
Yeah. Now that is an actual knife versus, say, a diamond engraver. A drag engraver.
Yeah,
that's right. Okay.
It is a knife. It's very similar in the way it operates to, you mentioned the Cricut before, but it spins on a bearing, and it works really good. It's limited in thickness of material. We could cut like maybe 2 sheets of cardstock. It'd probably be the thickest material that the blade can do. And we have different angle blades for different level of tight turns and things like that. Mm-hmm. But one thing we just started experimenting with about a month and a half ago, and we've added it to our website as a product, is Donic makes a drag knife, and because we have a customer that wants to use our machine to cut leather. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. I said, that's something I never even dreamed that we would be doing on our machine. But we add the Donic blade, which uses a utility knife blade, and it rides on a bearing and it pivots. And in VCarve Pro and Cut2D Pro and Aspire, there's a new gadget for a drag knife toolpath, and you can use that, and it'll actually create the movements needed to spin the blade by moving the X and Y axis. It's really cool. It works amazingly well. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that, thanks to their tool for a couple $100, we've been able to add a whole new array of things that we could cut. Like one of the things I've been working with too is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Flight Test.
Yes.
Okay. So those guys are awesome. And they have a whole product line that they sell of model airplanes that are completely made out of Dollar Tree foam board, just $1 sheets of foam board. and they have a couple lasers and their kits are laser cut. But with this drag knife, that allows us to be able to cut that kind of material as well on our machines. So
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I got to hang out with those guys at the Neat Fair 2 years ago or so. Yeah, they had their entire line of planes there, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, their plane designs are open source.
Yeah, they are. They do they sell them as, or they sell the kit. So what you're paying for is if you just don't want to cut the plans, then they'll do it for you. But yeah, all of the planes that they have, you can download the plans and make them yourself. So, that's funny. You mentioned that year that they were at the RAM show, I'm sorry, at the Neat Fair, that was the first and last year they were there. And my son and I were at that show, and we hung out with them as well. So I'm wondering if we met or, maybe just crossed paths on that weekend.
Yeah, it's really possible, because I was also hanging out towards the end of the show over in the quadcopter area. The way that they have the Neat Fair set up is this extremely long flight line, many football fields long. It's actually an airfield when it's not in a campground. But the areas are segmented or segregated for different types of flying. So the rotorcraft stuff was off on one end, away from the main flight line where everybody's flying back and forth. So, yeah. So you could go the entire weekend at that show if you stayed in one area and miss thousands of people.
Yeah. It's a cool event. The only downside for me is when you're running a business, there's zero cell service there. So, as you're about 20 minutes away from the place, your phone says no service, and you start to go into that internal panic mode. Like, how am I going to communicate with the world?
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. But that was a great show. Yeah. I'm sure we had to have crossed paths.
Yeah. I'm sure, there were some guys there from FlyRC at the time too, and I'm not sure if you were still with the company.
I was. That's why I was there.
So we probably met around Dave Barron's pavilion there. He has a large camping area. He brings everything. Dave is cool people. I've known him for years. Yeah,
exactly. Me too.
Yeah, the thing that is really inspiring about this story of you and the Stepcraft in the U.S. Thing to me is, how quickly it's happened from, design concept. Granted, there was a product already developed, but to build a business here in the U.S. that quickly, that's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's I guess professionally, I've done a lot of different things, but the things I'm most passionate about are sales and marketing. And I have a very unique way, very grassroots way of building up a business. And our biggest focus with Stepcraft, even above and beyond the machine, is the support. And it was a little sketchy when we first, you got to think about it. We were geared up to do a certain amount of sales here. And in 30 days, we sold over 220 systems, and we had to deliver. And not only did we have to deliver, but it was just me. So there was going to be 220 new customers with support calls and everything else. So I immediately knew I had to get the business out of my house. We rented an office and started the process of interviewing people. And I have Dan here now who works with me full time, and he's awesome. He takes care of. He's the guy you talk to when it comes to support, and we both have the same mindset. And day or night, if we're awake, the phone is near you. So if somebody has a problem, we'll try to address it, as quickly as possible. But I wanted to make sure that there was nobody that was, because the machine is made out of the country, and Germany is, as one of those countries that they primarily speak their native language. So the last thing somebody wants to do from the U.S. is have to place a call 6 hours ahead of time and, have language translation, issues and things. So this is a U.S. company right now, and we support everything here, parts, service. We do our own videos. We convert anything we can into imperial measurements first and metric second. So we make it as easy as possible. And, it's nice because you're getting essentially all the quality and engineering that you would expect from a German product, like you would with their automobiles. But you're getting all the sales and support help that you need, that you would expect from an American company.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you the one of the questions that I asked my other guests so far. If and you can take a minute to think about this if you need. But imagine that you can't fail. You got everything you need, all the resources that you need to accomplish whatever it is that you're going to go after is there. So machines are not an issue. Money is not an issue. Time is not an issue. You can't fail. What would you do in the next 30 days? What project would you go after?
I should have known. I should have known you were going to ask me that question, because you ask everybody. One thing that's really important to me, there's two things. Two things are important to me right now that I wish I had more time to do. My fiance, Michelle, who actually works with us here at Stepcraft as well, she has for years and years been coming up with various quotes that she's copywritten. They're inspirational quotes and things like that. And I have been wanting to take some of her quotes that she has, because they're very, very good, and create things that, like, wall plaques or acrylic signs or things like that out of some of her quotes, and so that she can put them on Etsy or even just for our house. And it seems like every time I get ready to do that, it isn't necessarily the machine or the money, it's the time that I lack to be able to do that. But I know that it would mean the world to her for me to be able to do something like that. So I wish I had more time to do that. And then the second thing is education. I've started to work really closely with several school systems around here, and they've asked me in to present and, to help teach this technology to people. And I love that. I love teaching people, and, I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. And it just comes down to time. So those are two things that mean a lot to me that I hope I can, in the next few months, find some time to make some of that happen.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Now, if you were going to get into the education end of things with this program, what would your main thrust be?
Well, the one thing that I'm most, when it comes to teaching people, obviously business and marketing is that's what I've done professionally. I've taken ideas and built them into huge businesses. And so I love that. I love walking into a business, I don't care whether it's a dry cleaner or whatever, and I can talk to the owner in 5 minutes. I can identify like a bunch of things that they can do and make suggestions to make it better. So one of my passions is much like you've been doing the same, and who knows, maybe we can work together on some stuff, is teaching people, hey, you've got this great technology, and a lot of people are creative, but they don't know how to do business, and some people are business and don't know how to be creative. So
exactly, yeah.
I would really love to spend more time teaching people how to turn their passion, whatever it is, into a business, whether it's CNC or I don't really care what it is. So that's with adults. That's what I'd love to do with students in a school. What's cool is my son's a perfect example. He's a freshman in high school this year, and he was all excited because he's taking a CAD class. And he walked into this CAD classroom, and it was nothing. It was just wall to wall IMAX, the newer kind, and he was all excited about that. But after a month of being in the class, he comes home and he's so bummed about this class because they haven't touched the computers yet.
You're kidding.
It's a beginning CAD class, right? Yeah. He's got a pencil in his hand. And then they finally started using the CAD programs, and it's very technical. And the problem I think that we have today is with video games and everything else, we're in a very instant gratification society. And a lot of kids in school, when it comes to this kind of technology, you have to do something right away to grab their attention. And what I love about our machine and this technology in general is that you could really shrink that to a week or two to have a student, come up with an idea, even if it was a square or a stop sign or something, it doesn't really matter what it is, but be able to draw something simple, learn the basics, then convert it to a tool path, and then put a piece of material in the machine and have it cut it out, or put a pen plotter in and have it draw it. But the idea is in their mind early on, they can go from an idea to something they could physically hold in their hand in a matter of days instead of waiting the entire school year to do it. And I think if we can get some school programs implementing that kind of curriculum in the tech classes, I think it'll be amazing what you'll see, because there's a lot of kids out there that have some pretty incredible ideas.
Yeah, I agree. When you're teaching kids and college students, the same applies. You've got to give them quick wins.
Yeah,
you've got to have something that they can feel that they're accomplishing something right away, or you'll lose their interest. The first thing I like to teach people when I'm doing CAD, not necessarily the Vectric Aspire and VCarve and all of that, but actual CAD, the computer aided drafting in 3D. I teach them how to make a Lego block, because it teaches them how to create a profile to extrude, the body of the block. It teaches them how to make a boss on the top for the little pibs that are on the top. It also teaches them how to do a cut pass for the the holes that are inside of the Lego, and shelling of the inner dimensions of that to get rid of all that excess material. I mean, it teaches you in that one Lego block the basics of CAD, and it's a very quick win. It's something that everyone can relate to. Everybody's played with Lego.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned Lego too, because when we do trade shows, that's when we put the 3D printer on, that's what we print.
Oh yeah,
we print awesome Lego blocks.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the great teaching models, in my opinion. Whoever thought of the Lego, I don't know who the original designer was. Actually, I did once, but I don't now. That thing is awesome, and that's the kind of instant win that keeps people, interested. Maybe they draw the block and then print one.
Yeah.
Or.
And the same thing holds true with anything, though. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I took piano lessons. My family wanted me to, and that was the most boring thing for a 9 or 10-year-old, because you're learning the absolute basics. And a star music teacher now will identify maybe a popular song that's easy to play or something like that, and quickly get the student to be able to make some noise that sounds similar to that to catch their attention. And then you're hooked. Then you can go back and you can learn the finer details, but you almost got to work both ends of the candle at the same time to keep their attention. And this technology really helps us accomplish that. And I'm hoping, and from the conversations I've had over the last 2 weeks with some local school systems here, everybody's really excited about it. And, they have a thing here. I don't know if they do up where you're in Rochester, right?
Near Syracuse, actually.
Or Syracuse, okay. They have 2 programs here in Connecticut. One of them is called the YAY program. It's the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, where they take I'm sorry, my phone. They take 4 students from each area or each county, and they teach them how to start their own business. It's a full year program, and they're middle school students typically, and they build a business from an idea all the way up to a final product and getting a bank account and everything. And that's an amazing program into itself. And then they also have the Invention Convention here, which is pretty popular, I think, throughout the country, where every child has to come up with some sort of an invention and figure out a way to market it, and that's part of the regular school program. And when I went to the Yukon 2 years ago, when my son did his invention, they had there's hundreds and hundreds of students there with tabletop displays. And some of the things that I saw were amazingly creative. And, it was pretty exciting, because, if that's what we have to look forward to 4 or 6 years from now when they graduate, there's going to be some really awesome stuff in our future.
Yeah, we had similar projects or programs when I was a kid. I was part of Junior Achievement, which, took kids and helped them build a business. It's nice to know that there's a modern model that teaches kids the entrepreneurial spirit and, how to go from a thought to an actual business. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
I'll have to look into those. How do people contact you, Eric? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, I mean, you can go to the StepCraft website, which is www.stepcraft.us. We also have we're on Facebook under StepCraft, YouTube, Twitter. It's StepCraft Inc. Is everywhere. As far as me, I could give my email for you to put on the show link, but my first name is spelled Erick. And a lot of people tend to misspell my email address. Mm-hmm. So if they just go info@stepcraft.us, that'll come directly to me anyway. And that's an easy one to remember.
Okay. Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I am personally under my name, Erick, Erick Royer, as well as StepCraft Inc. For StepCraft directly.
Okay. And for those in my Facebook group, the CNC Router Tips Facebook group, Eric is a member of our community, and I'm sure if you had any questions for him, he'd be more than glad to answer them.
Yeah, definitely. I got a shout out for your community. I love it. I was stuck on a project the other day. We had a client that wants us to try to make these prototype electrical boards, and they sent me 5051 or 5052. Which one's the correct?
They sent. I don't remember which aluminum.
I know
they
you
sent
commented on it. You helped me and a lot of other people.
We were trying to get you over to the 6061 aluminum.
Yeah,
from there.
so it's 5052. Then that's what it was. Aluminum. And it was very simple. It was an 1/8-inch aluminum. I put it on the machine. I was using a two flute upcut carbide end mill, and as soon as the end mill made contact with the aluminum, it immediately welded the tip and snapped. Mm-hmm. And I went through 3 or 4 of them. I'm like, what am I doing? And I calculated speeds and feeds, and our machine, it's like most routers. It's not a coolant based machine. And I put a post on the CNC Router Tips group. And I immediately, just a ton of people started commenting, telling me, you included, to mm-hmm. just get over to 6061. And I'd never worked with that material before, so I had no idea. And it's just very soft and difficult with a router to mill. So we switched to 6061, got the customer to do it, and it was a dream. I might as well be cutting balsa wood.
Yeah, the material that he was using has a problem on end mills, in a milling machine. You have to have special tooling, special feeds, and coolant to work with that other material. And the 6061, you don't need all that. And it's just much easier. Yeah.
But I really appreciated all the community support. With stuff like that. And even though this is what I do professionally and we sell machines, I still run across material that I've never used before. I mean, that's natural. And it's awesome to see how helpful everybody is.
Yeah. I learn as much or more from that group as I teach. I mean, it's just amazing the wealth of knowledge that is there.
Yeah, for sure.
And everybody is very good about sharing. I really like that about the group. I never expected it.
Yep. We have a group called StepCraft Crafters Club, which is basically comprised of StepCraft owners, but anybody can join it. And it's very similar. We have about 175 members, but it's, like I said, it's more a community of StepCraft owners that I'm just blown away in general by the social media and how helpful everybody is. And coming from the world of RC Universe with a forum type model, people were helpful in the forum. But one thing I noticed is in a forum, you don't have to use your real name.
Right.
You can hide behind an alias, and that allows you to say and do things that the normal person with your picture and your real name wouldn't do. And on Facebook, in these different groups that we're in, I noticed that there's just a lot less, of that and more quality. And, it's awesome. I really appreciate, you starting that up and inviting me in.
Oh, you're welcome. It's one of the things that I really enjoy about it is meeting other people who are into this, because this is one of my hot buttons. And finding somebody as much as a year ago who even knew what CNC was, let alone could, spend hours talking about it. That was, to me, this is a real big blessing. And I can't say how much I really enjoy talking about this stuff with people.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure. The other thing I wanted to do too was I kind of wanted to offer a coupon code for all of your listeners if they're ever interested in Stepcraft. I won't have any kind of time limit on it, but if they use let's use Router Tips. If they use that as a coupon code, then I will take 10% off their order. So I really, like I said, I really appreciate the community and the help they've given me, and it'd be nice to be able to give back to everybody a little bit. So,
well, thank you. I'm sure that the folks will appreciate that, and I can't thank you enough for that, Eric.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. And I'm hoping that you and I will find more things that we can collaborate on. It's been a pleasure talking with you here, and I really appreciate you doing this interview today.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for making the time and coming on the show. I'd like to ask at the end if there was something that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you and I could talk for indefinitely because we're in the same space, but I know I wanted to talk a little bit more about beginner related stuff, but we're already over an hour and I don't want to ramble on, but maybe we can do a follow-up someday, or if you want to have me on as a guest or something like that, we can collaborate and come up with some, because it's funny. I have every phone call. You got to imagine most of the people that call me to buy a machine are brand new to this technology. So I have a lot of different questions that are asked that I think would apply to a lot of people. So, but that would almost be a whole topic in itself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on the show, Eric. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed it as well. And I look forward to hanging out on the Facebook group for sure.
Fantastic.
All right. Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Eric Royer from Stepcraft.us and how he used the power of crowdfunding through Kickstarter to help build a business around a CNC router table. We discussed a large variety of links and resources in this episode, and I'm including them in the show notes of this podcast episode. Now, for those who don't know, show notes really just another name for a blog post about this episode. So if you go to cncroutertips.com/18, you'll be able to see this episode and the show notes, and there'll be links to everything that's on there. I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, cncroutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's cncroutertips.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone, and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the CNC Router Tips podcast. If you'd like to join our free mailing list, you can go to cncroutertips.com, and there's a link right there on the top of the page which tells you how to do that. Thank you so much and have a great day.